If you are sick to death of spending hundreds of dollars on boxing gloves that hardly last a few months, stick around because Powerbox Boxing, in my opinion, have created a set of boxing gloves that are the very best value in the market, bar none. What's up team, Ash here from Fight Spirit Reviews, and today I'm going to be reviewing arguably my pick for the very best value boxing gloves in Australia right now with the Exile Series boxing gloves from Powerbox Boxing. Now Powerbox is a relatively young boxing brand from what I've seen. They've only started in 2019 and they hail from good old down under here in Australia. So in terms of age, they are a relatively young company, especially in comparison to the competition that's out there, but just with the last few months of me trying this gear from them, I gotta tell you, I think they could easily outshine the competition. Powerbox as a brand kind of strikes me as the cool kid of the group. When you've got so much competition that looks the same these days, Powerbox really stands out as a contemporary, almost streetwear, really aesthetically pleasing brand, which in my opinion is a real winner in 2022. And on top of their gear not only looking good, the pricing that I'm seeing with the gear that they sell looks extremely reasonable. I'll leave a link to their Instagram and their website down in the description just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, while I can't really talk about their quality as a whole, from the experience that I've had with the Exile Series gloves and the Animal Heavy Hand Mix, which I'll be doing a review for very soon, what I can say is I definitely won't hesitate to buy another product from them in the near future at all. However, let's get back to the product for the moment, which are the Exile Series boxing gloves in the Kobe inspired matte purple and matte yellow design, which I bought in 12 ounces. So let's start by getting the weight out of the way. Now, while I am thankful the gloves both weighed the same, they both come in a little bit heavy at 13.5 ounces. And don't get me wrong, a heavier set of boxing gloves is not a deal breaker. Like other boxing enthusiasts, I think we can all agree that having a slightly heavier set of boxing gloves is better than a lighter pair. But again, just in regards to quality control, that is something they want to be mindful of in the future. Next, let's move on to the aesthetics, which is without a doubt the number one reason I went to purchase these gloves in the first place. The Exile Series is just a stunning boxing glove no matter how you look at it, especially from the 10 different colorways that they offer. But for me, there was simply no way I was going to be able to pass up a Kobe inspired design. From the super smooth casings, to the screening on the back, to the white glossy palm, everything just comes together in a really nice, neat and contemporary package. The Powerbox logo used in this series is really subtle and it's really unique, and I think Powerbox should really use this to carry the Powerbox flag for many years to come. Its wrist logo, however, is a solid standout in terms of craftsmanship. The wrist logo you can see is actually debossed into the leather and into the foam padding. So A, if you were to have, say, a plastic label, normally a plastic label that's set on top of a glove can easily cut you, can be brittle and break over time. And B, if you were to use a stitched label, over time, the wear and tear can cause moisture and sweat to deteriorate the label. This, however, to me, eliminates both of those issues. And on the palm side, you've got a very small little 12-ounce logo on there just for reference. The Exile's profile feels about the medium sort of size in terms of the width, with the length, however, pretty standard there as well, with the overall glove going about halfway down my forearm. Now, when it comes to the casing quality, this is where things start to get a little interesting. Powerbox uses a combination of synthetic microleather fiber. Powerbox use a combination of synthetic microfiber leathers as well as cowhide leather on this glove, which is a great combination in my eyes, especially when you're looking to improve the overall durability of a boxing glove. Funnily enough, it actually took me a few hours at least to actually realize which leather was placed in which section. Now, if I were to create a boxing glove and try to give the user the best mix of comfort and longevity, I would personally use the cowhide leathers or the animal leathers on the back side of the hand, the back side of the thumb, the back side of the wrist, and I would use the synthetics on the palm side where most of your sweat and your moisture is certainly going to build up. But what Powerbox have done in this case is they've put the cowhide leather on the palm side and the microfiber everywhere else. And this is a really intriguing choice in my eyes because I'm not sure what their thought process was when doing this. Maybe they believe that a cowhide leather is actually more durable than a synthetic, but it's an interesting question to ask. This is honestly the first pair of boxing gloves I've ever tried with a microfiber synthetic leather on it, and I'm really surprised more brands aren't doing it. The microfiber used on these gloves feels really high quality. It somewhat feels similar to a cowhide leather in a few ways. It has no natural imperfections which you'd find on a cowhide leather, and also, in my eyes, it's more resistant to sweat and moisture. So in terms of durability, that's a great thing. And that's exactly why you see many Muay Thai brands use this kind of microfiber leather like Fairtex, etc., or in Danger or In Fight Style use this product on shin guards and Thai pads, but I've never seen it on a boxing glove before. But I'm starting to ramble on a little bit, so let's move on to the stitching, which for the most part is also done very well. I would almost argue that these are actually machine made rather than handmade, just because of how well the stitching has been done. There are some double stitch ups in some areas, but no obvious blunders where you'd see somebody doing this by hand maybe make a slight error. So that's really nice, and that's across both gloves. It's actually hard to find a big difference between either glove at all. I do have two concerns though. The first one being the stitching here on the wrist. When it comes to the wrist compartment and when you're using the glove to take on and take off, a lot of the stress and a lot of the tension will actually come from that stitching area because that's where you're pulling from. So I would really try not to pull too aggressively, particularly from one end. Try and pull this glove on straight because the stitching does seem to come out a little bit. Just be very careful not to yank this too hard because this is the weak point here. If you pull on it too harshly, too often, it will start to fall apart. So just be careful there. And the other concern I have is not so much as a functional one, more of an aesthetic one, which is the elastic strap that's used to keep both sides of the wrist together. And while it's absolutely a good addition to any boxing glove, just having on the outside just looks a little bit tacky, especially when over time, this may get struck a few times from shots, maybe when you're clinching, etc. You just want to make sure that this is probably preferably on the inside next time, just so that A, it hides it and it can't be struck, and B, it hopefully has a little bit more of a longevity sitting on the inside of the capsule. And while we're on the wrist, let's take a look at this section. You've got a 4.5 inch wrist section and a 3 inch wrist strap, which is enclosed all in Velcro. And I've got to say, I've never spotted this kind of Velcro quality before. Typically Velcro on most boxing products is usually a little bit thicker, a little bit broader with the hooks and the loops, and can obviously cause a little bit of scratching from how coarse they can be. If you're like me and you have been scratched many times during Muay Thai sparring, just from the glove grazing you during a clinch or a punch coming across your face or your arm, it happens, sometimes more than not. But with Velcro like this being so slim and so soft, I think this as a feature is going to eliminate that almost entirely. And the Velcro clamps on and off really nicely. Even though I can't talk about the durability over years and years of time, I'd wager it would last at least 12 months of moderate usage. Now below the Velcro, when it comes to the wrist padding, you've got about 15 millimeters of generous padding, which I would say, because of how soft it is, it's probably more of a latex compound. And this gives me a real added sense of security and comfort if I want to do my wrist up nice and tight. And it's also good for blocking and parrying strikes. If I've got a bit of soft padding on the rear hand side and I'm shelling up, this is going to protect me really nicely. On the palm side, you've got two different sections of padding as well, which are about 10 millimeters thick, which start from the forearm, which go up pretty much to the base of the wrist. And funnily enough, I get the feeling that these two pieces here might actually be gel. The padding itself is quite firm, yet the edges on it are quite sharp, which resembles something of what a gel padding would do. It's really stiff, as I said before, but it still has a little bit of a bounce to it. I actually would really think it's either a very stiff foam or it's a proper gel pad, and either way, it feels really nice. Now moving on to another big plus in these gloves has got to be the Tricot lining. It is by far the most comfortable lining out of any that you get inside of a boxing glove. Yes, there's satins, but in terms of comfort, I think the Tricot is even better. It just feels so smooth to touch. The only downside, and the very small downside of having a Tricot liner, in my opinion, is it may absorb sweat and moisture a little bit more than your typical polyester. But in regards to hand comfort, it simply can't be beaten in my opinion. Just make sure that when you're training, you wear a good set of wraps, and after you train, air them out as quickly as possible so they stay fresh and don't start to smell. And in addition to the lining being so comfortable, the padding that's used throughout this glove is just another standout feature and also complements the hand fit, which I'll talk about in another minute. I'll start quickly by just going over the grip bar, which is 20 millimeters thick. It's around a soft to medium density, super easy for me to grip onto and easily make a fist. Now the knuckle area, in terms of the padding, is by far the standout of these gloves. They use 5 layers of padding here, and the feedback from them is absolutely phenomenal. I'd say again, it's around a soft to medium density, the medium density coming from the knuckle end and the softer padding coming from the end of the glove. So that when you do hit impact, it feels quite soft, but your knuckles still feel quite supported and don't feel like a pillow. It is relatively easy for me to feel my knuckles through these gloves with a decent enough push, but the bounce back even from just pushing my thumb in is quite noticeable and bounces back almost immediately. And not only does the padding feel great, it's actually angled really nicely in how it's crafted. You can see that when I hold my hand up straight, the two knuckles here are much more exposed compared to the rest of my hand, and it also hides my thumb really well behind. Another big positive when it comes to the padding is the amount of length that they put in over the knuckles down to the fingers. I see many manufacturers skimp on this, and what happens is if you look at any photos of boxing gloves online, typically they look like this a little bit. Now, not all gloves I say do this, but what you notice is they sort of cut off the padding at this angle, and if you have long fingers, it's incredibly uncomfortable to get your hands into a glove. It makes it hard to grip because you're pulling against padding and a casing that's not there, that's not long enough. I think Powerbox has done an outstanding job here. So if you do have slightly longer fingers, these are going to be a great option for you. And just lastly, when it comes to the padding, I experienced zero break-in period with these gloves. They felt great from the outset. I didn't feel like I had to hit the bag for many rounds for these gloves to feel like they just naturally melted to my hand. And lastly, let's talk about how all these pieces come together to give you an absolutely outstanding hand fit. The combination of the soft inner lining as well as the padding just gives you a really ergonomic hand fit inside of the capsule. On top of this, there's enough width for me to be able to put my hand in comfortably. There's enough length for me to make a really nice fist. There's no bunching of materials anywhere. There's no awkward stitching. There's no awkward foams, no tight endings, and all in all, just a very well-crafted pair of boxing gloves. Now, speaking of craftsmanship, I reached out to Powerbox when I purchased these gloves just to try and find out where these gloves were made. And while I didn't get a concrete confirmation, usually when you buy boxing gloves in Australia or anywhere, they tell you whether they're from Pakistan or Mexico or Japan. These didn't have any of that there, so I kind of had to guess. And if I had to, I would obviously think that these are probably made in China. Now, while I know there are some bad gloves that are made from China, the opposite can also be said. And there are some great ones, for examples, like the RS100s from Rival. I think, like any country of origin, there are going to be gloves that are very good and very bad, no matter where they're manufactured from. And if I could relate Powerbox to any other brand on the market, I would put them on the spectrum of Rival. I think with the profiling, the feedback, the padding, the hand fit, I think this is a very upmarket brand. So big props to Powerbox for going for more high-end feeling products rather than the cheaper stuff. And from my experience with the XL Series boxing gloves, they are just an incredible pair of gloves in my eyes. Now, while I recently said that the Primo Classic Series gloves are my go-to gloves for bag and pad work, I think Powerbox have stepped it up a notch in terms of protection for the hand. I've done many rounds of bag and pad work with these gloves, and they just feel fantastic. The hand protection on them, as I said before, is top-notch. I've felt the least amount of wrist and knuckle pain with these gloves compared to any other multi-layer gloves before, and the feedback on them is just second to none. And I'm really impressed by how well they've held up over the last few months. They basically look unused, which is a massive plus. And for 130 Aussie dollars, I just can't think of a glove, especially in this country, that can match the value in terms of what you're receiving at that price point. From the materials to the craftsmanship to the features in this glove, unless you're being super picky about what you like, I just think these are going to be incredibly hard to beat at that $130 mark. And when it comes to people that I would recommend this glove for, there isn't anybody that I could particularly pick who I wouldn't recommend these set of boxing gloves for. From boxers to Thai boxers, amateurs or professionals, there's just nobody that I wouldn't refer these to. The only people that I maybe not recommend these to would say people who spar a lot, who need a set of gloves that are built to getting bashed if you're going to be catching or shelling or parrying. Maybe these aren't the gloves for you, or maybe if you have a lot of hand issues, probably better to go with something with a lot more padding on the front end. But virtually for everyone else, these are a huge winner. And just to summarize though, Powerbox in my eyes have been a lifelong customer in me. I'm super impressed by the quality of this single product alone, and I definitely won't hesitate to buy a product from them in the near future. And that's it for the review, guys, so thanks so much for sticking around. If you did enjoy this video, leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I've got some other reviews and other content that you can check out. I'll leave some spots here for you to have a look at them. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them down in the box below. And hopefully I'll have another review for you all very soon.